In 2004, the woman who made me whole died in a hospital in Wyoming. I was so broken I couldn't attend her funeral. My name is Warren Buffett, and this is not a story about money. It's a story about what money cannot buy, and what it took me decades to understand. I was born on August 30th, 1930, in Omaha, Nebraska, in the middle of the Great Depression. Scarcity was normal. My father was a stockbroker and later a congressman, so markets were part of everyday conversation in our home. I didn't grow up thinking Wall Street was mysterious. I grew up thinking it was practical. Numbers weren't abstract, they were tools. But let me be honest about something people rarely discuss: my emotional life. I did not grow up in a warm home. My father was kind and principled, but my mother, Layla, carried pain she never learned to manage. She would berate my sister Doris for hours, calling her stupid until she was sobbing. I watched. I said nothing. I was afraid of becoming the target myself. That shame has stayed with me. Silence, when someone you love is suffering, is its own kind of failure. As a child, I found safety in numbers because numbers never criticized me. They were predictable. They were fair. But people are not numbers, and I spent decades not fully understanding that. I was obsessed with making money from the beginning. At 6 years old, I bought a 6-pack of Coca-Cola for 25 cents and sold each bottle door to door for 5 cents. That's a 20% return. I didn't know the term return on investment, but I understood the arithmetic. If you can buy something for less than you sell it for, and you can repeat that process, you have a machine. At 11, I bought my first stock, 3 shares of Citi's Service Preferred. It dropped shortly after I bought it. That sinking feeling? I remember it clearly. Eventually, it climbed back up, and I sold for a small profit. I felt smart, until it later soared many times higher. That was my first real lesson. Impatience can be more expensive than a loss. The market rewards those who wait. By high school, I was delivering newspapers, including the Washington Post, managing multiple routes and optimizing my time. I treated it like a business. By graduation, I had saved $1,200. Saving creates optionality. Optionality creates leverage. I went to Wharton at 16, but it felt too theoretical. I transferred back to Nebraska and finished my degree quickly. Then I read a book that permanently shaped my thinking. The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. Graham's approach was simple but profound. Treat stocks as ownership in real businesses. Demand a margin of safety. Ignore emotion. Focus on intrinsic value. I applied to Columbia specifically to study under him. I was rejected at first. I persisted. I got in. Graham and David Dodd refined my thinking. They taught me that investing is not forecasting, it's valuation. After Columbia, Graham didn't initially hire me, so I went back to Omaha and worked in my father's brokerage. Eventually, Graham brought me into his firm in New York. There, I learned discipline and capital allocation. But when he retired, I returned home and started my own partnership in 1956, with just over $100,000 from family and friends. I structured my fees simply. No management fee, only a share of profits above a certain threshold. If I didn't perform, I didn't earn. Alignment builds trust. When I married Susie in 1952, She saw something in me I couldn't see in myself. She used to say I was like a half-finished painting, potential without completion. She gave me emotional fluency I never had. She taught me that success without connection is hollow. Susie put me together, but I failed her in ways I still regret. My work consumed me. I was physically present but emotionally absent. She hoped that once I had enough money I would slow down. I never did. For over a decade, my partnership compounded at extraordinary rates. But what mattered wasn't the percentage, it was the process. We bought undervalued securities. We avoided speculation. We minimized downside risk. In the early 1960s, I began buying shares in a struggling textile company called Berkshire Hathaway. The textile business itself was fading, but I saw something more important: a vehicle. Over time, I shifted Berkshire from textiles into insurance. Insurance provided float, capital collected today that could be invested until claims were paid. Float, when managed properly, is one of the most powerful financial tools in existence. In the 1970s, my partnership with Charlie Munger deepened my evolution as an investor. Charlie pushed me beyond buying merely cheap businesses. He convinced me to buy wonderful businesses at fair prices instead of fair businesses at wonderful prices. That shift was transformative. We acquired companies with durable competitive advantages, strong brands, pricing power, disciplined management. We avoided excessive debt. We thought in decades, not quarters. But in 1977, Susie moved to San Francisco to pursue her own life. We never divorced. We spoke every day. We traveled together. But she needed room to breathe, room I had not given her. She introduced me to Astrid, who moved into our Omaha home and cared for me. The three of us stayed close. Our Christmas cards were signed Warren, Susie, and Astrid. People found it unconventional, but love doesn't follow templates. We made mistakes in business, too. I avoided technology for years because I didn't understand it. That caution made me miss early opportunities in companies like Google and Amazon. But staying within your circle of competence is critical. You don't have to swing at every pitch. Eventually, when I truly understood Apple as a consumer ecosystem with brand loyalty and recurring economics, we made it a major investment. We lived through market crashes, 1973, 1987, the dot-com bubble, 2008. In times of panic, liquidity is king. When others were forced to sell, we were prepared to buy. Fear distorts price. Discipline captures value. On the personal side, I've always kept things simple. I still live in the house I bought in 1958. Not because simplicity is virtuous, but because happiness doesn't scale with square footage. I drink cherry Coke. I read for hours every day. Reading compounds knowledge the way interest compounds capital. When Susie was diagnosed with oral cancer in 2003, I flew to be with her every weekend. I sat by her bed. I held her hand. For decades, I had prioritized spreadsheets over presence. Now, time was running out. She recovered enough to lead the sing-along at our shareholder meeting in May 2004. 2 months later, she suffered a stroke and died. She was 72. I could not attend her funeral. The grief was too heavy. Bono sang "Forever Young" in her memory. I stayed home, broken. I once said that letting Susie go was the greatest mistake of my life. It was preventable. That is the cost of obsession, even productive obsession. You can build an empire and still lose what matters most. 2 years later, I married Astrid, who had cared for me since Susie left. She keeps me together now. But Susie's voice is still with me, reminding me that wealth means nothing if you neglect the people you love. In 2006, I pledged to give away more than 99% of my wealth. Money, beyond a certain point, has diminishing personal utility. Capital should serve society. The opportunities I had were created by a system larger than me. At Berkshire's annual meetings in Omaha, tens of thousands gather. But what we discuss isn't hype. It's rationality. It's governance. It's long-term thinking. The market is not a casino. It's a mechanism for transferring wealth from the impatient to the patient. Compound interest is powerful, but compounding only works if you avoid catastrophic interruption. Avoid leverage that can wipe you out. Avoid emotional decisions. Protect your reputation at all costs. It takes decades to build and minutes to destroy. You don't need a genius-level IQ to succeed in investing. You need emotional stability. You need the ability to sit still when others panic and to resist greed when others celebrate. I started with a 6-pack of Coke and a simple arithmetic principle. Buy for less than you sell. Repeat intelligently. Allow time to magnify the results. Wealth is not built in dramatic moments. It's built in disciplined, boring consistency. But here's what I wish I had understood sooner. Invest in yourself first, yes, but invest in the people who love you. Your mind is your greatest asset, but your relationships are your greatest treasure. Protect your integrity. Think long-term, and let compounding of character, of capital, and of love do the rest. This is Warren Buffett.